The meal cart hit the turbulence pocket at exactly the wrong moment. Madison's hands gripped the handle as the plane shuddered, but her angle was already off. Too close to seat 2A, the wheels locked at a deliberate slant. The passenger seated there, a black woman in an ivory blazer, glanced up from her book just as the tray tilted forward. Time collapsed into slow motion. The coffee went first, a dark arc cutting through recycled cabin air. Then the pasta, penne and red sauce, followed by the full glass of Merlot. It hit fabric, skin, leather. The sound was wet and final. Gasps erupted from nearby rows. Madison's mouth opened in theatrical horror, her hand flying to her chest. "Oh my God! I am so sorry." The woman sat motionless. Sauce dripped from her blazer onto the armrest, pooling in expensive fabric creases. Her book, some legal text, was now spotted with wine. She didn't flinch, didn't gasp, didn't even look down at the mess saturating her lap. Madison grabbed a handful of cocktail napkins and began dabbing frantically at the blazer. "The turbulence, I'm so sorry, let me help you." "Don't." One word, quiet, final. Madison's hands froze. The woman's eyes were steady, dark, completely unreadable. Around them, passengers had gone silent. The uncomfortable kind of silence, where everyone pretends not to watch while watching everything. Madison stepped back, napkins crumpled in her fist. "I'll get you club soda, a new meal, we'll comp your dry cleaning. What's your employee number?" The question landed like a slap. Not loud, not angry, just precise. Madison blinked. What?" "Your employee number." The woman's voice carried a weight that made Madison's rehearsed apologies die in her throat. "I'd like it now, please. It's 47239. Madison heard herself stammer. The woman didn't write it down, didn't pull out her phone. She just looked at Madison for 3 long seconds, then nodded once. As if filing it away in some mental database, Madison suddenly, desperately, did not want to be part of. Then the woman returned to her book, sauce-stained and dripping, as if Madison no longer existed. 12 hours earlier, Madison Chen had arrived at O'Hare International with the easy confidence of someone who'd mastered her domain. Her royal blue uniform was pressed to razor creases. Her hair was pulled into the regulation bun, smooth and severe. She nodded to security, waved at the gate agents, moved through the employee corridors like she owned them. 3 years on the Chicago to LaGuardia route had taught her the invisible architecture of air travel. Who mattered? Who didn't, and how to manage both with surgical efficiency. In the crew lounge, she grabbed coffee and scanned the passenger manifest on her tablet. First class was full today. She noted names with practiced speed. Senator Bradley in 1A, tech CEO in 1C, a couple celebrating an anniversary in 3B and 3C. Seat 2A caught her eye briefly. Dr. Angela Morrison. The name felt vaguely familiar, like something heard in passing, but Madison dismissed it. Doctors were common in first class. Probably a cardiologist or dermatologist flying for a conference. Her colleague, Jamie, appeared with his own coffee. "Big day?" "Standard run," Madison said. "Full boat up front, though. Should keep us busy." They fell into the easy rhythm of pre-flight gossip. Jamie mentioned a passenger complaint from last week. Someone claiming discrimination over seat assignments. Madison rolled her eyes. "People love playing that card when they don't get their way." Jamie laughed. "And right? Like we're just doing our jobs." Madison had perfected the art of doing her job. Warm towels for passengers who made eye contact, who dressed well, who fit her unconscious checklist of priority service, efficient but distant for everyone else. She'd never been written up, never missed a shift, never had a complaint stick. Management loved her numbers. Her crew respected her consistency. She didn't think of it as discrimination, just resource management. There were only so many hours in a flight, only so much attention to distribute. You had to prioritize somehow. She gathered her things and headed toward the gate. Boarding would begin in 40 minutes. Another routine flight. Another day of quiet hierarchies and invisible decisions. Madison Chen had no idea she was 12 hours away from the end of everything she'd built. Dr. Angela Morrison boarded during the first-class priority window, her carry-on compact, her stride unhurried. Madison stationed herself near the entrance with her professional smile, the one that reached her eyes for some passengers, but not all. Angela moved past her with a quiet nod. Madison's smile stayed on her face but went nowhere deeper. "Welcome aboard," Madison said automatically. Angela settled into 2A, tucking her bag overhead with practiced efficiency. As the cabin filled, Madison moved through her pre-flight routine. Hot towels for 1A and 1C. Champagne offered to the anniversary couple. Pre-departure beverages circulated with strategic attention to detail. When Angela raised her hand politely, Madison glanced over. "Yes, may I have a blanket, please? It's quite cold. I'll get to you." Madison's tone was light but edged. She continued down the aisle, delivering pillows to 3B, adjusting an overhead bin for 1C. 20 minutes passed. The plane pushed back from the gate. Angela sat quietly, arms crossed against the aggressive air conditioning. No blanket arrived. After takeoff, Madison reappeared with the beverage cart. She worked through first class with detailed attention, explaining wine options to the senator, offering warm nuts to the tech CEO. When she reached row 2, her energy dimmed. "Beverage? Water, please," Angela said. "And if it's not too much trouble, that blanket?" Madison poured the water in silence. "We're short on blankets today. I'll see what I can do." She moved on without waiting for a response. Angela watched her deliver 3 blankets to rows behind her within the next 5 minutes. The meal service began an hour into the flight. Madison and Jamie maneuvered the heavy cart down the aisle, describing entree options with theatrical flair for most passengers. When they reached Angela, Madison's description was clipped. "Pasta or chicken?" "Pasta, please." Madison lifted the tray from the cart, but her positioning was wrong, too close to Angela's seat, the angle awkward. Jamie noticed and started to say something, but Madison was already moving. The plane hit a minor bump. Nothing unusual. Nothing most flight attendants couldn't navigate blindfolded. The tray tilted, coffee first, steaming and dark. Then the pasta, red sauce exploding across ivory fabric. The wineglass followed, Merlot cascading like a slow-motion disaster. It soaked Angela's blazer, her lap, the leather seat. The cabin filled with gasps and shocked silence. Madison's hands flew up. "Oh my God! I'm so sorry." The turbulence. Angela sat perfectly still, her expression unreadable. Sauce dripped onto the armrest, her book, her hands. She didn't move, didn't react. Just watched Madison with eyes that catalogued everything. Madison grabbed napkins, dabbing uselessly. "I'll get club soda, let me help." "What's your employee number?" The question cut through Madison's panic. Not angry, surgical. Madison's mouth went dry. 47239. Angela didn't write it down, just nodded once, slowly, as if locking the number behind her eyes. Then she returned to her ruined book, dismissing Madison completely. Madison retreated to the galley, her hands trembling. Jamie followed, whispering urgently. "Was that really an accident?" Madison didn't answer. She stared at the coffee maker, her reflection warped in the stainless steel. The question echoed in her skull. "What's your employee number?" Not, "Can I speak to your supervisor?" Not, "This is unacceptable." Just that one clinical question delivered like a scalpel. She'd handled complaints before. Angry passengers were easy. You apologized profusely, offered vouchers, let them vent. They usually calmed down, accepted compensation, moved on. But this woman hadn't raised her voice, hadn't demanded anything. She'd just asked for Madison's number and filed it away with terrifying precision. Madison's pulse hammered. She grabbed a bottle of club soda and a stack of proper towels, forcing herself to return to row 2. "Ma'am, I have club soda and—" "No, thank you." Angela didn't look up from her book. Sauce stains covered the pages, but she kept reading as if nothing had happened. "I can get you a new meal complimentary. Just water." "Thank you." The professionalism in Angela's voice was worse than anger. It was controlled, documented, final. Madison set the water down and fled back to the galley. For the rest of the flight, she avoided row 2 entirely, letting Jamie handle any requests from that section. But she could feel Angela's presence like a weight pressing against her spine. Every time she passed through the cabin, she felt those dark eyes tracking her peripherally. Not watching, just noting. 90 minutes from landing, Madison locked herself in the bathroom. In the mirror, her face looked flushed, uncertain. She'd never been questioned like that, never felt the ground shift beneath her polished professionalism. The woman in 2A sat in that ruined blazer for 2 hours, never changing, never making a scene. Just sitting there, present and accusatory in her silence. Madison splashed cold water on her face. She told herself it was fine. These things happened. Turbulence, accidents, the chaos of meal service. No one could prove anything. It would blow over. But that question kept circling back. What's your employee number? And the way the woman had memorized it, locked it away, as if she'd need it later. Madison Chen grew up in suburban Milwaukee, the daughter of a high school teacher and an electrician. Her parents taught her that appearances mattered, the right smile, the right words, the subtle navigation of social hierarchies. Her mother was polite to everyone, but reserved real warmth for certain neighbors. Madison absorbed the pattern like osmosis. She learned to read rooms, to categorize people, to distribute her energy strategically. She'd chosen flight attending for the uniform, the travel, the small thrill of controlled authority. Her father had told her once, "You don't have to like everyone. Just be professional." Madison had taken that advice and, somewhere over 3 years, twisted it into something else. Different standards for different passengers. Efficiency, she called it. Reading the room. Managing limited resources in a constrained environment. She'd never thought of it as discrimination. That word belonged to overt acts, slurs, refusals of service, visible cruelty. What she practiced was subtler. A slower response time here, a cooler tone there, an extra smile reserved for passengers who fit an unspoken profile. Small things, invisible things, things no one could prove. Her record was spotless. 3 years, 0 complaints that stuck. Management praised her efficiency. Passengers rarely complained, because most never realized they were being treated differently. The system protected her, because the system was built on 1,000 small choices just like hers. Meanwhile, 3 decades earlier on Chicago's South Side, Angela Morrison had watched her grandmother leave for work at 4 a.m. Angela was 7 years old, standing at the kitchen window as her grandmother disappeared into the pre-dawn darkness. She cleaned offices in the Loop, the buildings where executives made decisions, where power concentrated itself in marble lobbies and corner offices. Her grandmother scrubbed their toilets, emptied their trash, and came home exhausted. Angela's mother had broken that cycle, becoming a union organizer who fought for health care, fair scheduling, protection from retaliation. Angela watched her mother negotiate contracts, watched her stand in picket lines, watched her refuse to accept "that's just how things are" as an answer. Angela became a labor attorney at 28. By 35, she was organizing service workers across 3 states. When the National Union for Airline Service Workers needed a new president, she ran on a platform of dignity and accountability. She won by overwhelming margin. Flight attendants, ground crew, gate agents all voting for someone who'd actually fight for them. Today's flight was research. She'd booked under Dr. Morrison deliberately, keeping her union title quiet. She wanted to see the airline's service standards from a passenger's perspective, wanted to experience what her members reported in anonymous surveys. She'd hoped for professionalism. She'd found a case study instead. Angela sat in the stained ivory blazer for the remaining 2 hours, documenting everything mentally. Timestamps, witness positions, the crew's subsequent over-attentiveness to other passengers, their careful avoidance of her. She recognized the pattern with the clarity of someone who'd spent years analyzing discrimination complaints. This wasn't her first experience with accidental mistreatment, but it was her first with the power to address it systemically. She noted how Madison circulated through first class 3 more times, offering warm cookies and extra beverages to every passenger except her. How Jamie approached her seat twice, clearly sent to check if she needed anything, his discomfort obvious. How the captain made an announcement thanking our valued first-class passengers, without once making eye contact with row 2 during his cabin walk. Angela didn't pull out her phone or take notes. She didn't need to. Years of depositions and hearings had trained her memory. Besides, visible documentation would have changed the dynamic. She needed to see the unfiltered truth. The plane began its descent into LaGuardia. Angela gathered her belongings slowly, her ruined blazer stiff with dried sauce, her book permanently stained, her white blouse showing coffee splatters. She waited as other passengers deplaned, watching Madison hover near the galley with forced casualness. Finally, Angela stood. She moved toward the exit with unhurried precision. At the cockpit door, Captain Stevens offered his routine thanks. Captain Stevens. Angela's voice was clear, carrying. I'll need incident documentation for today's meal service. Accident in seat 2A. Standard protocol for potential. Workplace conduct review. The captain's expression shifted from autopilot, politeness to confusion. I'm sorry, I'm Angela Morrison. She let the name sit for a moment. National Union President for Airline Service Workers. I'll be filing an official report within 24 hours. I'd appreciate the flight manifest and crew assignments forwarded to my office. The captain's face went pale. Behind Angela, she heard a sharp intake of breath. She didn't need to turn around to know Madison was standing there, frozen. Ms. Morrison, President Morrison, the captain stammered. Dr. Morrison is fine. Angela's tone remained professional, almost gentle. I'm not angry, Captain. I'm just documenting. That's what we do when we want to change systems, not just punish individuals. Your crew will hear from HR for standard review. Nothing more, nothing less. She walked up the jetway, her stained blazer a testament. Behind her, Madison stood paralyzed in the aircraft doorway. The words echoed in her skull, Union President. Workplace conduct review. HR Jamie's whisper barely registered. That's Angela Morrison. She just negotiated those new anti-discrimination protections. She's been on the news. But Madison couldn't hear anything over the sound of her perfect record shattering like glass. Madison's phone buzzed at 6 a.m. the next morning. A text from her supervisor. Need to see you. 10 a.m. HR office, mandatory. She sat on the edge of her bed staring at the message. Her hands felt numb. She'd barely slept, replaying every moment of yesterday's flight in her head, searching for plausible deniability. Turbulence, equipment malfunction, honest accident. The words sounded hollow even in her own mind. By 9:45 she was in the HR waiting area, her uniform immaculate, her expression carefully neutral. 2 other flight attendants sat nearby, both looking confused. Jamie was one of them. He caught her eye and mouthed, "What's going on?" Madison shook her head. She couldn't speak, couldn't explain that they were collateral damage in her personal disaster. The HR director, Patricia Chen, no relation, called them in together. The office was sterile. White walls, a conference table, a laptop positioned at an angle Madison couldn't see. Patricia's expression was professionally blank. Yesterday's flight 2847, Patricia began. We received a formal incident report from a passenger, Dr. Angela Morrison. Jamie's confusion deepened. Madison felt her stomach drop. Patricia continued. Dr. Morrison is the National Union President. She was traveling incognito to assess service quality across our airline. Her report documents several concerning patterns. Patricia pulled up something on her laptop. Delayed response to service requests, differential treatment of passengers, and an incident involving a meal service accident that she believes may not have been accidental. It was turbulence, Madison said quickly. The plane hit a bump. The cockpit logged minimal turbulence during meal service, Patricia interrupted. And Dr. Morrison's report includes witness observations. Multiple passengers noted that you delivered blankets to other rows while skipping hers despite repeated requests. That you provided detailed service to surrounding passengers while offering minimal engagement with seat 2A. Madison's carefully constructed reality began crumbling. I was busy. First class was full. I prioritized. That's the problem, Madison. Who you prioritized and who you didn't. Patricia's tone softened slightly. Dr. Morrison isn't seeking termination. She's documented this as a teaching moment. You're being placed on administrative leave pending a full review. Mandatory bias training will be required before reinstatement. Jamie, you're required to complete supplementary training as well for failure to intervene when discrimination was observable. Jamie looked stunned. I didn't know. That's also the problem. Patricia closed her laptop. This isn't about ruining careers. It's about recognizing patterns we've ignored too long. You're both suspended for 2 weeks. We'll be in touch. Madison walked out into the bright morning. Her perfect record now marked with a word she'd never thought would apply to her: discrimination. Madison spent the first 3 days of suspension in her apartment, alternating between rage and denial. She texted friends from other airlines looking for validation. Most were sympathetic. Everyone's too sensitive now. You can't do anything without someone claiming discrimination. But a few went silent. One friend, an older black flight attendant named Denise, finally replied, "Maybe use this time to think about why this happened." Madison deleted the message. On day 4, she forced herself to read the union's public statement. It didn't name her specifically, but the details were unmistakable. A recent incident highlights persistent inequities in customer service standards. Our members deserve training that addresses implicit bias and ensures dignity for all passengers. The comment section exploded. Some supported the union, others attacked Angela Morrison, playing the race card for attention, creating problems where none exist, ruining someone's career over an accident. Madison felt a flicker of hope. Public opinion was split. Maybe this would blow over. Maybe she could frame herself as the victim of political correctness, of a union president with an agenda. Then, on day 6, she received a certified letter. It was an invitation, not a summons. The language carefully clarified, to participate in a restorative justice dialogue facilitated by the union. Dr. Angela Morrison would be present. Madison could bring a support person. The goal wasn't punishment, the letter explained, but understanding. Madison's first instinct was to refuse, but the letter's final paragraph made her pause. Your participation, while voluntary, will be noted in your reinstatement file. Refusal may signal unwillingness to engage in professional growth. She was trapped. Participate and face the woman she'd humiliated, or refuse and confirm herself as irredeemable. That night, Madison pulled out the employee handbook she'd never fully read. She found the section on discrimination policies, the language about equitable treatment regardless of race, ethnicity, or background. Words she'd skimmed during training, never thinking they'd apply to her. She'd thought of herself as professional, efficient, not racist. She'd never used slurs, never refused service. But sitting in her dark apartment, staring at that ivory blazer in her memory, she couldn't escape one question. If that passenger had been white, would the tray have spilled? The answer sat heavy in her chest. She didn't want to acknowledge it, but it was there. Madison showed up to the restorative justice meeting 15 minutes early. her hands shaking. The union office was smaller than she'd expected. Modest furniture, walls covered with photos of flight attendants from different eras, different faces all wearing the same uniform, a reminder that the job was bigger than any individual's comfort. Angela Morrison entered exactly on time. She wore a simple emerald green blouse and black slacks, professional but not the power suit Madison had imagined. Angela's expression was neutral, not angry, not triumphant, just present. A mediator named Marcus facilitated introductions. The format was simple. Each person would share their experience without interruption. Then they'd dialogue together. Angela went first. "I don't think Madison woke up that day planning to discriminate against me," she began. "I think she spent years making hundreds of small decisions. Who gets faster service, who gets a warmer tone, who gets the benefit of the doubt. Those decisions became habit, invisible, automatic." Madison wanted to interrupt, to defend herself, but Marcus gestured for patience. Angela continued. "I sat in that stained blazer for 2 hours, not because I wanted to humiliate anyone, but because I needed to document what my members experience routinely. The small slights, the delayed service, the feeling of being less than in spaces they've paid to occupy." Angela's voice remained steady. "Madison, I don't hate you, but I'm not going to pretend that what happened was just an accident." The room fell silent. Marcus turned to Madison. "For your turn." Madison's throat felt tight. She'd prepared a defense, a list of justifications. But sitting across from Angela, seeing the photos of flight attendants on the walls, black, white, Asian, Latina, all wearing the same uniform, the defenses crumbled. "I didn't think I was racist," Madison said quietly. "I thought I was just being efficient. But the truth is, I made different choices for different passengers. I gave some people my full attention, and others just enough to get by." Her voice cracked. "I convinced myself it didn't matter because I was never cruel. But absence of cruelty isn't the same as presence of dignity." The words felt like glass coming up. But they were true. For the first time in 2 weeks, Madison stopped defending herself and started listening. The dialogue lasted 3 hours. Angela shared stories Madison had never considered. Routine humiliations her members faced, complaints dismissed as oversensitivity, patterns of service that communicated "you don't belong here" in 1,000 subtle ways. Marcus posed questions that cut through Madison's remaining defenses. "When you decided who needed a blanket first, what factors did you consider? When you explained meal options in detail to some passengers, but not others, what made the difference?" Madison couldn't answer honestly, without admitting what she'd been avoiding. She'd assessed passengers through a lens she'd never examined. Assumptions about who deserved extra care, who would tip, who fit in first class. Race wasn't the only factor, but it was threaded through everything: class markers, speech patterns, clothing choices, all filtered through biases she'd absorbed without questioning. Angela didn't gloat. She asked harder questions. "Do you think I was your first black passenger treated differently? Or just the first one with the power to hold you accountable?" The question landed like a punch. Madison thought of other flights, other passengers she'd rushed past, other service requests she'd deprioritized, faces she couldn't quite remember because she'd never really seen them. Near the end of the session, Angela made an unexpected offer. The union's launching mandatory bias training for all airline staff. "We need flight attendants to help design it, people who've been on both sides of this, people who understand how easy it is to fall into patterns without realizing it." She looked at Madison directly. "I'm not offering you redemption. I'm offering you work, real uncomfortable work to help change the system that shaped your choices." Madison's voice was barely a whisper. "Why would you want me involved?" "Because you're not unique," Angela said simply. "You're just the one who got caught. If you're willing to be honest about how you got here, you can help others avoid the same path." It wasn't forgiveness. It was something harder, an invitation to accountability that would last longer than any suspension. Marcus wrapped up the session with action steps. Madison would complete bias training, participate in curriculum development, and fly supervised flights to demonstrate changed behavior. Angela would document the process for union records. As they stood to leave, Angela extended her hand. "This doesn't erase what happened, but it's a start." Madison took her hand, feeling the weight of what came next. 6 weeks later, Madison stood before a review board, HR representatives, union officials, and Angela Morrison. The room was formal. Long table, recording equipment, prepared statements. This wasn't a trial, Patricia had emphasized, but a professional evaluation. Madison's reinstatement depended on demonstrating genuine growth, not just completing training hours. Patricia opened the review. "Madison, you've completed 60 hours of bias training, participated in curriculum development for airline-wide implementation, and flown 4 supervised flights. Your supervisors report significant changes in your service patterns. But we'd like to hear from you directly. What have you learned?" Madison had prepared for this. She'd written and rewritten her statement dozens of times. But sitting across from Angela, the prepared words felt insufficient. "I learned that I spent 3 years believing professionalism meant treating everyone politely," Madison began. "But I gave different quality of service to different passengers based on assumptions I never examined. I told myself I was being efficient, but I was really rationing dignity." She pulled out a notebook, the one she'd kept during supervised flights. "On my first supervised flight, I was assigned an evaluator who monitored every interaction. I realized how much mental energy I used to spend categorizing passengers, deciding who deserved my full attention and who didn't. Without that categorization, I was exhausted at first. It felt like too much work to give everyone equal care." Angela leaned forward slightly. "What changed?" "I stopped thinking of equal treatment as extra work and started thinking of my old patterns as theft," Madison said. "I was stealing dignity from passengers who'd paid for the same service as everyone else, stealing their comfort, their sense of belonging. Small thefts, but theft nonetheless." A union representative spoke up. "The passengers from your supervised flight submitted feedback. I'll read some." She pulled up a tablet. "From Flight 3421, the flight attendant was attentive and professional to all passengers, regardless of seating section. From Flight 3890, I felt genuinely cared for, not just serviced. From Flight 4103, best airline experience I've had in years, the crew made everyone feel valued." Madison felt something crack in her chest, relief mixed with shame. "Those should have been my baseline," she said quietly. "Not achievements." Angela spoke for the first time. "Madison participated in curriculum development sessions with candor that surprised me. She identified patterns in training materials that allowed bias to hide. She pushed for specificity, not just treat everyone equally, but actionable steps for recognizing when you're not." Patricia made notes. "The union has recommended reinstatement with conditions, continued quarterly bias reviews, mentoring new flight attendants on equitable service, and participation in ongoing curriculum updates. Madison, do you accept these terms?" Madison nodded. "Yes, and I'd like to add something." She looked at Angela. "I want to apologize publicly. Not a corporate apology, but a real one. I want other flight attendants to hear what I did and why it was wrong. If that helps change the culture, it's worth whatever discomfort it causes me." The room fell silent. Angela's expression was unreadable. Finally she spoke. "That's between you and the union's communications team. But if you do it, make sure it's honest. Don't center yourself as the victim who learned a lesson. Send to the passengers who deserved better and didn't get it." Madison met her eyes. "I will." Patricia closed her folder. "Pending final approval, you're cleared for reinstatement effective next week. This case will remain in your file permanently. Your record isn't spotless anymore, Madison. It's marked." The question is whether that mark becomes a scar you hide or a reminder that keeps you accountable. Madison stood, her legs unsteady. Thank you, all of you. As the room emptied, Angela lingered. You're not done, you know. This isn't a redemption arc that ends with applause. It's daily work for the rest of your career. I know, Madison said. I'm ready for that. Angela studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Not forgiveness, recognition. Then do the work. Madison's first flight back was the same Chicago to LaGuardia route. She stood at the aircraft door as passengers boarded, and this time she saw them differently. Not as categories to manage, but as individuals who'd chosen to trust this airline with their time, safety, and dignity. The responsibility felt heavier now, but clearer. An elderly black woman in first class requested a pillow before takeoff. Madison brought it immediately, along with a blanket she hadn't been asked for. In case you need it, she said warmly. The woman's surprised smile told Madison how rare that treatment had been. During meal service, she moved with deliberate care. Equal descriptions of entree, equal warmth in her tone, equal attention to comfort. It took more energy, more presence, but it felt right in a way her old efficiency never had. Halfway through the flight, a young man traveling with his family thanked her for her service. You made my mom feel really welcome, he said. She was nervous about flying. You helped. Madison felt tears prick her eyes. That's my job, she said. I'm glad I did it right. After landing, she updated her notebook with observations and moments she wanted to remember. The work Angela had described wasn't theoretical anymore. It was this, every flight, every passenger, every choice. At home that evening, Madison found a package on her doorstep. Inside was the ivory blazer from that first flight, professionally cleaned, carefully folded, with a note from Angela. Keep this. Remember what it cost. Do better. Madison hung the blazer in her closet where she'd see it every morning, a reminder of who she'd been and who she was becoming. Not redeemed, just accountable. She texted Angela, thank you. I'll keep doing the work. The response came minutes later. That's all any of us can do. 6 months later, Madison stood before a room of new flight attendants during bias training. The ivory blazer hung on a stand beside her, a teaching tool now, not a trophy. She told them the story without softening it. The accidental spill, the patterns she'd normalized, the union president she'd underestimated. I thought professionalism meant being polite, she told them. But politeness without equity is just performance. I performed for 3 years while treating passengers differently, based on biases I never examined. She pointed to the blazer. This represents every passenger I shortchanged before Dr. Morrison. Every person who paid for service I rationed, based on assumptions I thought were harmless. They weren't harmless. They were theft. A trainee raised her hand. But how do you catch yourself doing it? You pay attention, Madison said, to who you're warmest with naturally, who you rush past, whose requests you prioritize. Then you ask why. The answer is usually uncomfortable. That discomfort is the work. After the training, Angela appeared at the back of the room. She'd observed silently, evaluating Madison's presentation for the quarterly review. They walked to the parking lot together. You're getting better at this, Angela said. Still feels like penance sometimes, Madison admitted. Good. The day it feels easy is the day you stop being honest. Angela paused at her car. You know what changed my mind about your reinstatement? Not the training completion, not the apologies. It was when you said your perfect record being marked was appropriate. That you needed the reminder. Madison looked back at the training facility. I do need it. Every day. Angela smiled slightly. The first genuine warmth Madison had seen from her. Then you might actually change some minds. Not just yours. That's the real work. They parted ways under a sky turning gold with sunset. Madison drove home with the window down, feeling the weight of accountability settle into something steadier than guilt. She'd never be unmarked again. Her record would always carry that incident, that suspension, that reckoning. But the mark wasn't a scar to hide. It was a compass pointing toward who she needed to become. That night she wrote in her journal, Day 183 of doing better. Still learning, still accountable. Still here, the work continued. The work would always continue. And for the first time since that catastrophic spill, Madison understood that the work was the point. Not redemption, not forgiveness, just the daily, deliberate choice to see every passenger as deserving of dignity, and to prove it through action, one flight at a time.